Hey, time for a wild tale straight from our corner of the universe. Just when you think a situation will end cleanly, life has a way of throwing in a few sparks. And maybe even a police report or two for good measure. Nothing about what happened here was straightforward. My wife completely lost it after I caught her cheating. She had me falsely arrested. Now, the tables have turned, and she's facing the consequences. Normally, I never would have bothered writing this out. I figured it would be a simple, cut-and-dry ordeal. I'd confront her, tell her I knew about the affair, file for divorce, and we'd each move on with our lives. But the way it unfolded, no one could have predicted it. I'll try not to drag this out too much, though there are plenty of details I need to share. I'm 42, my wife Maddie is 40. We've been married 13 years and have 2 kids under the age of 10. Like most couples who've been together that long, we've had our share of disagreements, but nothing out of the ordinary. We don't use drugs, neither of us has ever been diagnosed with any mental health issues, and while we're far from wealthy, we've generally been content with where we are in life. Honestly, before all this happened, I didn't notice anything off about Maddie. Nothing made me suspect infidelity. If anything, maybe I wasn't as attentive as I should have been. I run a business and do my best to keep the family comfortable. But still, there were no obvious warning signs. In the end, I only discovered she was cheating because she made a careless mistake. One evening, she told me an old college friend was in town and she wanted to meet up before they left. Sounded reasonable enough, so I offered to handle the kids for the night. She promised she'd be back before midnight. It was a Friday, so I didn't think twice about it. Midnight came and went. No Maddie. I texted her asking where she was, no reply. By 1 a.m., I didn't feel like freezing on the porch waiting. So I sat by the big bay window downstairs. The street was quiet, barely any traffic. Car passed once but didn't stop. 2 minutes later, I heard another vehicle pull up. It was a slightly lifted truck, about as macho as they come. It idled across the street before pulling away. That's when I saw Maddie, barefoot, heels in hand, walking toward the house. When she stepped inside, I greeted her, and she jumped like I'd startled her. I asked why she was so late. She claimed she and her friend got carried away talking and lost track of time. Her apology sounded sincere enough, so I let it slide, until I asked who dropped her off. She hesitated, probably realizing I might have seen the truck. She said it was an Uber. I called her out immediately. Nobody drives a lifted truck for Uber. The lie made no sense. She stuck to her story until I asked to see the Uber app on her phone. She refused. That's when she shifted her story, saying it was some guy she and her friend met at a bar, and he'd given her a ride as a favor. She claimed she only lied to avoid me, overreacting. I told her that if that story was true, it was even worse. Why would a married woman let a random man drive her home, especially with 2 kids at home? And now that stranger knew where we lived. She tried to justify it, but her excuses only made me angrier. That's when it first hit me. Something entirely different had happened that night. I asked for her friend's name. She refused to answer. Asked again. Still nothing, just more anger and shouting. Our voices got louder, and I eventually backed off so we wouldn't wake the kids or alert the neighbors. I slept on the couch that night, but the suspicion had fully taken root. I was going to get to the bottom of this. The next morning was tense. I asked if she was ready to be honest. She snapped back that I always act like I'm right and above everyone else. Her tone was sharper than I'd ever heard. She still wouldn't give me a name. At that point, I knew I'd have to snoop. I'd done it once before. Back then, I found out her ex had been messaging her. She barely engaged and eventually stopped replying, which reassured me at the time. Maybe that's why this new betrayal blindsided me so hard. That Sunday night while she slept, I grabbed her phone and stepped out of the room. It didn't take long. One of her most recent conversations was with a man named Marshall. As soon as I opened it, I saw explicit messages. Scroll up a little. There were intimate photos exchanged. Further up, I found messages from the day in question, confirming their plans earlier that afternoon. So much for that old college friend. I'd wanted to be wrong about her, but the confirmation hit me like a punch to the gut. Not guilt for her, but a sickening realization that my life was about to be blown apart. 13 years married, nearly 2 decades together. And this wasn't her first time. Just the first time I'd caught her. Now our kids will have to endure the whole divorce process, which breaks my heart. And I'll be single again at 42. A grim thought when I believed I'd already built the life I wanted. Strangely, my first emotion wasn't rage, but sadness, like I was grieving a life that no longer existed. I documented everything, put the phone back, and waited for the right moment to confront her. When the kids weren't home. The next morning, once they were out, I told her directly. I knew she was cheating. I mentioned how suspicious her behavior had been and said I now had proof. I didn't reveal everything at once. Wanted to see her reaction. She laughed, saying I had no proof because she hadn't lied. Then I mentioned Marshall. That shut her up for a moment. Finally, she asked. You went through my phone. A pathetic deflection. When I didn't answer, she claimed I'd driven her to it. Said I'd been neglectful, fallen out of love with her, and forced her to seek affection elsewhere. She even warned that if we split, the kids would blame me. That's when I realized she'd completely lost touch with reality. I might not be a perfect romance movie husband, But I know I've been good to her. I work as hard as any man providing for his family. And when I'm home, I give her my attention and try to make time for us. Her "you grew distant" excuse was pure garbage. Just a story she told herself so she wouldn't have to see herself as the villain. I told her flat out, nothing I did brought us here. This was entirely the result of her own lousy choices and toxic attitude. I told her straight up there was no way she was going to avoid a divorce. Then I made the mistake of adding that I'd make sure the kids stayed with me. That was the trigger. Her expression changed instantly. Almost frantic. Frenzied is the only word for it. I'd never seen her eyes look like that before. She told me that if I ever tried to take her children from her, she'd kill me in my sleep. That was a massive escalation. And for someone I'd never seen act so unhinged, it honestly scared me. Unfortunately, I laughed it off, shook my head, and made a snide remark, telling her I wouldn't let my kids grow up with a mother like her. She lunged at me. I managed to dodge, and she stumbled to the floor. From there, she just unleashed a stream of curses, hurling every insult she could think of, claiming even that Marshall was a better man than I was. That point I had to get out, not just to cool down, but because I was genuinely worried she was losing her grip on reality. I stayed away for about 2 hours, and when I came back she seemed calmer. I thought about finding somewhere else to stay, but I knew she'd never let me take the kids, and I didn't want to leave them alone with her. So I stayed, but I kept my guard up. The next day I went to work. The kids went to school and she stayed home. I was fine with everyone being apart from her for the day. I had already gotten a referral for a divorce attorney from a friend, and I planned to see him the following day because I needed this divorce in motion. Fast. Near the end of my shift, a coworker came to get me, saying I needed to see something. Outside, my truck's windshield was smashed, and someone had keyed the word "witch" into the driver's side door. The rest of that side was covered in random deep scratches. Since our parking area isn't visible from the workplace itself, no one saw who did it, but it was obvious to me. Called her. No answer. So I drove home in the same damaged truck. When I got there, she was acting completely normal, like nothing had happened. I lost it. The kids were home by then, but my temper didn't even register that fact. I unloaded everything I was feeling, and she just laughed, which only made it worse. I stormed out before I did something I couldn't take back. If you think that was the peak of her craziness, nope, not even close. About an hour later, once I'd cooled down, I returned home and saw 2 police cars out front. As I approached, an officer asked my name. When I gave it, he told me to put my hands behind my back. I was being detained for investigation. My stomach dropped. My first thought was that she'd done something to the kids and was framing me. But then I saw her, standing there with a welt on her face and a bruise on her forehead. That's when I realized she was accusing me of assaulting her. Neighbors were gathered on the street. My kids stood on the porch, watching as I was arrested. Easily one of the worst moments of my life. Long story short, after the preliminary investigation, they let me go. Her initial story didn't match the one she eventually stuck to, but in both versions she claimed I'd slapped her and slammed her head into the floor because I blamed her for vandalizing my truck. The thing that really saved me was when they interviewed my oldest. He told them he'd been peeking from upstairs during our fight and saw me leave the house, never laying a hand on her. He's only 9, but he's sharp, and I'm sure that came through to the police. That's when I knew I couldn't stay there anymore. I'll deal with the legal fallout later, but for now, I've been out of the house for 2 days. I still don't know if she hurt herself or got someone else to do it, but either way I'm done. She was so threatened by the idea of me taking custody that she tried to frame me for domestic violence. Tomorrow she'll be served. I just want the divorce finished as quickly as possible. No revenge, no drama. I just want peace, safety for my kids, and to be able to breathe again. Date. Months later, here's the conclusion. After I caught her cheating and told her I wanted a divorce and custody of the kids, she went off the rails. She keyed my truck, smashed the windshield, and tried to frame me for assault. In the end, I had to move out for my own safety. The divorce is final now. I have 70% custody of the kids and I get to keep the house. I do have to pay alimony, which I couldn't avoid despite having proof of her cheating and her erratic behavior. As for the car vandalism, I got security footage from near my workplace that showed her parking, walking straight to my truck and damaging it. The camera angle wasn't perfect. If we'd only seen the act itself, it wouldn't have been enough. But since we had footage of her arriving, it sealed it. On top of the divorce, I took legal action against her for the false arrest and property damage. I couldn't fully prove she'd fabricated the assault claim, but I did get a protective order based on the vandalism. The order required that all custody exchanges happen in public places. The court awarded me damages for the repairs, plus punitive damages. She couldn't pay all at once, so she had to hand over a big portion immediately and is on a payment plan for the rest. I'm still looking into whether the police will pursue charges for misuse of 911 and criminal damage. They might, especially since she was recently arrested for disorderly intoxication, and unbelievably asked me to bail her out. I didn't, of course, so that's the end of it. My ex-wife went full-blown destructive after getting caught cheating, all to dodge responsibility, and it backfired. What a disaster. An Uber in a lifted truck keying my car, trying to frame me, pure chaos. The image of neighbors watching and my kids standing there while I was arrested is something I'll never forget. Sure, paying alimony stings. But honestly, it feels like she's on a one-way trip to ruining herself. With her recent arrest, I think karma's already on the job. Thanks for sticking through the story. If you're watching this on our space, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you won't miss the next one. Until next time.